Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and after a season-long layoff, welcome back to the Mac. And boy was this a return. Lots of stuff to cover, so let's dive right into the two-part Season 2 premiere. These two episodes don't necessarily have a ton of plot per se, but what they do have is a ton of shifts, adjustments, and modifications regarding character dynamics and relationships. Almost every noteworthy dynamic gets touched on or gets a moment to shine, with the exception of Cece and Bex since they've overcome most of their hurdles, as well as the Marty-Buffy dynamic since Marty isn't back yet. We start with Andi trying to convince Bowie to ask Bex to marry him. It seems to them that everything, including the universe, is in place for this to happen, and the proposal itself was clever, since this show established early on that pizza was a go-to food source for emotionally laden situations. But it shouldn't surprise anyone that Bex eventually says no, for now. I predicted at the end of Season 1 that they'd focus on this particular subplot as an episode-by-episode focal point. Andi Mack is at its best when it latches onto a narrative that can't be figured out in 22 minutes, so this was a smart move. Now it's on Bowie to eventually prove why he's worth marrying as he attempts to combat the drifter perception he's been known for up until now. We could be looking at a season finale situation here, but then again, maybe not. This show has built a reputation for showing its cards basically whenever it wants to, and keeps us guessing every week because of that. Also important here is the three-way dynamic among Jonah, Amber, and Andi. We all knew we'd get more into Amber's perspective eventually, and here we get a pretty potent first look. Her father hasn't had a job for months, but has been trying to keep up appearances just to not deal with the full reality of his situation. Seems to me that Amber is in a similar situation, since her need to have a boyfriend is essentially a different kind of keeping up appearances. So it'll be interesting to see how her character progresses from here, since she already seems night and day from where she was in Season 1. There's always the chance that something sneakier is going on with Amber, since she's been a completely unpleasant person so far, yeah, but I'm actually hoping that's not the case. She might never be anyone's favorite character, but I do think her situation is worth delving further into. And then we have Andi, who is trying to figure out this whole liking Jonah thing. That plays out more or less how you'd expect. Andi actually knows Jonah is into her now, meaning that there's both pressure and expectations now. So it makes sense that her ability to talk to him would adjust. What's really interesting, however, is the role Buffy is currently playing in all of this, which we'll get to soon. But now, it's time for what you've all been waiting for. All the folks that basically called this since day one can go ahead and exchange high fives now. Cyrus has always liked Jonah as more than a friend. It's out there. It's canon. And while that development might not be shocking to most of us, especially given what we've seen from them in Season 1, it's hella shocking coming from Disney Channel, who have been allergic to proper representation for a long while. And now, for the first time, they'll be diving into the complications of one boy coming out of the closet and trying to figure out what that all means. And even though I personally can't relate to Cyrus on that level, many people can, and that's why this matters. I assume they'll do something impressive with this development, since this is Andi Mack, but they shouldn't fall into the trap of feeling overly obliged to do so. You don't have to essentially change the show title to read Cyrus Goodman now. Don't make this milestone the important part. Make the narrative you construct with it the important part. Act like you've been there before, because that's what will make Cyrus's personal journey resonate best. Cyrus will always be weird, but he's no different. Remember that. Getting to Buffy, she has an interesting way of connecting to most of the characters this episode. She's at any one point Andi's defender, Cyrus's confidant, and a Jonah skeptic. It was interesting to me, though, how she seemed to favor trying to convince Andi off of Jonah. And that's because all three hats she wears over the course of 42 odd minutes are connected. Remember, she's the only one that Cyrus has confessed to. What's also relevant, even before then, this pair have actually been through a lot together. When Andi is off handling parental drama, it's often them that pair off to handle the side plot of the week. Their friendship to this point is very developed, a little more so than Andi's connection to either one of them because of the aforementioned Mack family drama. And the only person who knows that Buffy sometimes feels insecure about how female she's perceived to be is, in fact, Cyrus. Knowing all of that, it stands to reason that maybe, just maybe, she's a little more invested in seeing him happy. That isn't to say that she wants to see Andi unhappy, of course, but perhaps there's a bit of subconscious influence going on with her. That, or she's being purposeful about it and just not outright saying it, either is possible. But it seems to me that Buffy will have a lot more influence this season on how this friend group dynamic will shape out. A friend group that will probably get a ton more focus relative to last season, since the Boy-Beck situation is less about figuring things out and more about working towards the end goal of marriage. All in all, Andi Mack delivers once again. Last time they had a season opener, they dropped the teen mom reveal, convincing most people right out of the gate that this show was not messing around. And this time, they took their reveal-centric nature and one-upped themselves. There are far too many firsts and milestones now with this show on this channel to even properly track. But it's working. Not because the reveals themselves are surprising or shocking, shock value is cheap, but because they then do something with those reveals, tie them to the narrative, create good stories with lively and interesting characters that go through real arcs. Or, put another way, Andi Mack's ambition is almost perfectly in line with its structural competence. Save 2 or maybe 3 episodes so far, it always goes big and sticks the landing. And guess what? Next week will finally be that cultural episode that I basically begged them to make in season 1. Coincidence? I'm thinking yes, but even still, it'll be fun to see how they handle Chinese New Year's. And until then, thanks for watching.